My thumb pressed hard against the sticky edge of the last wedding invitation. I stacked it on top of the others on my kitchen counter. 75 envelopes. Not a single one had the names of my mother, my father, my sister Megan, or my brother Jason written across the front. The thick stack of cream paper sat there, completely finalized. My phone vibrated against the marble. The screen lit up with a text from my sister. Mom says you are getting married in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Send our invites to the New Charlotte address. My chest tightened. A phantom reflex from a lifetime of obedience. But I picked up the device, my fingers moving over the glass screen with steady, heavy strikes. There are no invites for you. You are not welcome. I hit send. I pressed the block button right after the screen went black. I dropped the phone back onto the counter and exhaled a breath I had been holding for my entire life. They treated me like a kitchen appliance, but appliances do not fight back. I do. 5 years ago, if you told me my wedding day would be the biggest act of quiet revenge I would ever pull off, I would have laughed. I was the family workhorse, the reliable, quiet baker who existed only to serve. I remember standing in the service hallway of the country club at Megan's wedding. She had explicitly told me 2 months prior that I was not invited to the actual reception. She said I would not fit in with her high society friends. But she still demanded I provide the custom 5-tier fondant cake and the entire dessert bar for free. Family takes care of family. My mother had told me, tapping her manicured nails on my bakery counter, it was $8,000 worth of labor and ingredients. I hauled those heavy boxes through the service entrance alone, sweating in my work clothes, listening to the string quartet playing in the ballroom. My mother intercepted me in the hallway. She did not say thank you. She looked at my flour-dusted apron and told me to leave through the back door before the real guests arrived. Jason did the exact same thing a year later. No invitation to the ceremony, but an expectation of free labor. I swallowed the lump in my throat back then and stared at the floor. I believed that if I just worked hard enough, if I was just useful enough, they would eventually love me. They never hated me. I realize that now. They simply viewed me as property. Then I met Ryan. Ryan did not look at me and see a favor waiting to be asked. He looked at me and saw a partner. When he proposed, my entire world shifted. We started planning a beautiful, intimate ceremony in the mountains. We paid for it ourselves. Word travels fast in Charlotte. The moment the venue was booked, the demand started. My mother left a voicemail asking what time I would be delivering my own wedding cake to the venue and demanding a +1 for Jason's new girlfriend. She did not ask how I was feeling. She asked what I was providing. That was the moment the last chain snapped. I drafted a single, formal text to all of them. I am not baking a cake, and none of you are allowed on the premises. The explosion was instantaneous. Passive-aggressive posts flooded social media. Megan wrote long paragraphs about ungrateful siblings. My mother left sobbing, voicemails accusing me of tearing the family apart. Jason sent a text promising I would die alone. I maintained absolute silence. I did not engage. I denied them the argument they desperately craved. Ryan and I drove up to the Blue Ridge Mountains and got married, surrounded by friends who actually knew my favorite color and colleagues who supported my business. It was peaceful, but peace was a threat to their control. A week after we returned to Charlotte, they decided to force my submission. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Ryan was at work. I was in the kitchen when the pounding started. It was not a knock. It was a violent, rhythmic hammering against my front door. I looked through the peephole. My mother, my father, Megan, and Jason were crowded onto my porch. Open the door. Sarah. My father barked through the wood. Stop this nonsense and submit to your real family. I did not argue through the glass. I did not cry. I picked up my phone, dialed 911, and requested immediate assistance for aggressive trespassers. The police arrived with their lights flashing, painting the neighborhood in harsh red and blue. My mother immediately shifted her posture. Her face softened into a mask of maternal concern. She rushed toward the officers, tears welling in her eyes, claiming I was a confused girl manipulated by a controlling husband. She played the victim flawlessly. I opened my front door and stepped out onto the porch. The air was crisp. I handed the lead officer a printed folder. Inside were time-stamped copies of Jason's threats, Megan's harassment, and my explicit messages telling them to stay away. The officer scanned the pages. His expression hardened. He turned to my mother and told her to step back. I looked directly into my mother's eyes. I want a formal criminal trespass warning issued to all 4 of them. I said, my voice did not shake. The officer nodded. The power flipped in a single heartbeat. My father's face turned a violent shade of red. Megan stood speechless, her mouth slightly open. My mother looked around frantically, realizing the neighbors were standing on their lawns, watching them get legally banished from my property. The officers escorted them to their cars. I closed my door and locked it. I thought it was over. But a narcissist cannot survive being publicly humiliated. Megan was drowning in credit card debt. She had spent years funding a lifestyle she could not afford. And her twisted logic convinced her that I was the reason for her failures. If she destroyed my bakery, I would go bankrupt. I would lose my independence. I would be forced to crawl back home and become their subservient financial safety net again. 3 nights later, under the cover of darkness, Megan drove to my bakery. She thought she was a mastermind. She located the external power box behind the alley and cut both the main power line and the local internet cable. She assumed this blinded my security cameras. Then she took a heavy steel crowbar and smashed the glass storefront to pieces. She destroyed the display cases. She wrecked the commercial ovens. But Megan did not know I had upgraded my security a month prior. I had installed a commercial-grade system with a cellular battery backup. The moment the glass shattered, my phone lit up on my nightstand. The motion-activated cloud camera feed showed Megan's smug face in ultra-high definition, illuminated by the streetlights outside. She had committed a felony, and the footage was instantly beamed to a secure off-site server. She had outsmarted no one but herself. The police arrested Megan at her home the next morning. I was not there, but the arresting officer called to inform me. He described the sheer panic in her voice as the handcuffs clicked into place. She was charged with felony vandalism and violating the protective order. But the criminal charges were only the beginning. The real devastation was financial. I called my insurance provider because I held a premium business interruption policy. I received an emergency preliminary payout within days. It was enough to cover my lost wages and hire contractors to completely remodel and upgrade the bakery. Then, the multi-billion-dollar insurance corporation unleashed their legal team. They invoked a subrogation clause. They filed an aggressive, relentless lawsuit against Megan to recoup every single penny of the damages, plus legal fees. Megan was instantly hit with a devastating asset freeze. She could not access her bank accounts. She was trapped in a multi-year legal nightmare she absolutely could not afford to fight. My brother Jason tried to fix it. He showed up at the temporary kitchen space I was renting. He did not puff out his chest this time. He was visibly sweating. His hands shook as he begged me to call off the insurance company and drop the criminal charges. He told me our parents were taking out a second mortgage on their house just to pay Megan's retainer fees. They were bleeding cash. I looked at him. I remembered hauling those cake boxes through the service entrance. I remembered his text telling me I would die alone. I picked up a printed copy of the trespassing warning from my desk and slid it across the counter toward him. Not my problem. I picked up my phone and called building security. Jason scrambled backward, his face pale, and walked out the door. That was the last time I ever saw him. The silence that followed was absolute. The fear of corporate lawyers and police intervention permanently severed their toxic grip. I walked into my newly rebuilt, state-of-the-art bakery with Ryan by my side. I opened my laptop, found the digital folder containing all the old family photos, hit Delete T, and smiled. The burden was gone. Now, I look out at the people standing in line at my bakery. I see regulars who ask about my day. I see friends who show up to help me clean up after a busy holiday shift. I see a chosen family built on mutual respect, not forced obligation. When you spend your entire life inside a toxic family system, you are conditioned to believe that you are the problem. They tell you that you are selfish for wanting boundaries. They use the word loyalty as a disguise for ownership. They demand endless sacrifices and call it love. But it is not love. It is a hostage situation disguised as a bloodline. I had to unlearn years of paralyzing guilt. I had to realize that my empathy was the exact weapon they were using to bleed me dry. Toxic people do not mourn the loss of a relationship when you walk away. They mourn the loss of control. They mourn the loss of the free labor, the emotional punching bag, the quiet appliance they relied on to make their own lives easier. The moment you stop playing your assigned role, they panic. If you are listening to this and you feel that familiar heavy weight in your chest, I need you to understand 3 rules that saved my life. Rule number 1, blood is a biological fact, not a lifelong debt. You do not owe your sanity, your finance, or your peace of mind to people simply because you share genetic material. A shared last name is not a license for lifetime abuse. True family is an action, not an accident of birth. It is built on respect, reciprocity, and safety. If those elements are missing, it is not a family. It is a shared history of trauma. Rule number 2, the boundary you refuse to set is the trauma you choose to endure. For years, I stayed silent because I thought silence was keeping the peace. I was wrong. Silence does not keep the peace. It only funds their abuse. Every time you swallow your pride, every time you do the favor, every time you show up to the event where you are treated like a ghost, you are paying the premium on their toxic behavior. You have to be willing to be the villain in their story in order to be the hero in your own. Rule number 3, the best revenge is not anger. It is absolute, untouchable apathy. When I blocked their numbers, when I handed that police report over, when I looked Jason in the eye and felt absolutely nothing, I won. Once you stop reacting to their games, they lose all their power over your reality. They desperately want your anger, because anger means you still care. Indifference is the armor they cannot pierce. It takes terrifying courage to walk away from the only people you have ever known, even when they are hurting you. You will doubt yourself. You will feel a hollow ache on holidays, but that ache is temporary. It is the growing pain of making space for people who actually value your presence. I am Sarah Carter. I am a baker, a wife, and a cycle breaker. I built my own table, and I get to choose exactly who sits at it. What is the one boundary you know you need to set today? but have been too afraid to enforce? Tell me in the comments and let us hold each other accountable. It is time to take your life back. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are watching Sarah haul $8,000 worth of custom cakes through a service door, being told to leave by her own mother. And you are thinking, why on earth did she do it? Why did she wait so long to walk away? Why didn't she just drop the cakes on the floor and quit years ago? It is easy to judge from the outside, but let us break down exactly what was happening in Sarah's mind and how you can protect yourself if you are in a similar situation. Psychologists call this the slot machine effect or intermittent reinforcement. When you are raised in a highly toxic or narcissistic family system, you are not abused 100% of the time. If it was all bad, it would be easy to leave. Instead, they give you crumbs, a rare compliment, a brief moment of inclusion. You keep pulling the lever, putting in your time, your money, and your free labor, hoping that this time you will hit the jackpot of their unconditional love. Sarah was not stupid. She was conditioned to believe her worth was tied strictly to her utility. She was addicted to the hope that if she was just useful enough, she would finally belong. But notice how Sarah broke the cycle. She executed what I call the street smart escapology. Let us analyze her brilliant financial and legal defense strategy. First, she used the audit strategy. When her family demanded a massive cake and plus ones for her wedding, she did not get emotional. She established a hard physical boundary. Scammers and toxic manipulators thrive in the gray areas of emotional guilt. Sarah removed the emotion and dealt strictly in facts. No cake. No entry. Second, she mastered building the case. Notice what happened on the front porch. When her family showed up to intimidate her, she did not scream back. She called the authorities and handed them a printed folder of evidence. Time-stamped texts, documented threats. She brought a paper trail to an emotional gunfight. If you are dealing with toxic people, stop talking on the phone. Get everything in writing. Finally, she inadvertently executed the ultimate buyout. When Megan vandalized the bakery, she thought she was destroying Sarah. But Sarah had secured premium business insurance. The subrogation lawsuit filed by the insurance company meant that Sarah did not have to pay a single lawyer to fight her sister. The multi-billion-dollar corporation did the fighting for her. Sarah invested in her own security, and it completely bankrupted her abuser. You do not owe your abusers access to your life just because you share a bloodline. Your peace of mind is your most valuable asset. Protect it ruthlessly. Have you ever had to enforce a massive boundary with a toxic person in your life? How did you handle the guilt? Drop your story in the comments below. Sharing your experience might be the exact blueprint someone else needs to finally break free. Stay safe. Stay smart. And remember, trust is earned, not owed. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are watching Hao Ting haul $8,000 worth of custom cakes through a service door, being told to leave by her own mother. And you are thinking, why on earth did she do it? Why did she wait so long to walk away? Why did she keep paying them with her time and her money? It is incredibly easy to judge from the outside looking in. But let us break down exactly what was happening in her mind and how you can protect yourself if you ever find yourself in a similar situation. Psychologists refer to this trap as the slot machine effect, which is a form of intermittent reinforcement. When you are raised in a highly toxic environment, you are not treated terribly 100% of the time. If the experience was all bad, it would be easy to pack up and leave. Instead, toxic people give you crumbs of hope. They give you a rare compliment or a brief moment of inclusion. Hao Ting was not stupid or weak. She was conditioned She was addicted to the hope that if she was just useful enough, if she just kept pulling that lever and providing free labor, she would finally hit the jackpot of their unconditional love. But notice how she eventually broke the cycle. Let us analyze her brilliant financial and legal defense strategy, because she made 3 incredibly street-smart moves that you can apply to your own life. First, she used the audit strategy. When her family demanded a massive cake for her own wedding, she did not get sucked into an emotional screaming match. Scammers and toxic manipulators thrive in the gray areas of emotional guilt. Pouting removed the emotion and dealt strictly in facts and boundaries. No cake. No entry. Second, she mastered building the case. Notice what happened on her front porch. When her family showed up to intimidate her, she did not argue through the glass. She called the authorities and handed them a printed folder of evidence. She had time-stamped texts and documented threats. She brought a pristine paper trail to an emotional gunfight. Finally, she executed the buyout. When her sister Jinwen vandalized the bakery, the sister thought she was dealing a fatal blow. But Hyaltin had secured premium business insurance. The subrogation lawsuit filed by that insurance company meant that she did not have to pay a single lawyer out of pocket to fight her sister. She invested in her own security and freedom, and the corporate lawyers completely bankrupted her abuser for her. You do not owe your abusers access to your life simply because you share a bloodline. Your peace of mind is your most valuable asset, and you must protect it ruthlessly. And that is the part nobody prepares you for. Not the police lights, not the shattered glass, not even the court papers. The hardest part is the silence after you finally stop letting them use you. Because at first, peace feels suspicious. When you have spent your whole life waiting for the next demand, the next insult, the next guilt trip, calm can feel like danger. You keep checking your phone. You keep expecting someone to burst through the door. You keep wondering if maybe you were too harsh, too cold, too unforgiving. But then one ordinary morning, you wake up and realize nothing bad happened overnight. No screaming voicemail. No emergency manufactured to drag you back. No family crisis designed to empty your wallet and break your spirit. Just sunlight on the kitchen floor. Coffee brewing. Your own life waiting for you. That is when healing begins. Sarah did not win because Megan was arrested. She did not win because the bakery was rebuilt bigger and stronger than before. She won because she finally stopped auditioning for love from people who had already decided she was only useful when she was suffering. She stopped begging to be chosen by a family that only reached for her when they needed labor, money, or someone to blame. And that is the lesson. Sometimes the people who call you selfish are really just angry that you are no longer convenient. They were never upset because you changed. They were upset because you stopped being easy to control. The moment Sarah said no, she became dangerous to them. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she became unavailable. If you are watching this and you recognize yourself in her story, listen carefully. You do not need a dramatic courtroom scene to start choosing yourself. You do not need someone to destroy your business before you are allowed to set a boundary. You do not need permission to protect your peace. The first boundary can be small. Do not answer the phone after midnight. Do not lend money you cannot afford to lose. Do not explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Do not show up where you are only tolerated because you are useful. And most importantly, stop confusing guilt with evidence. Feeling guilty does not mean you did something wrong. Sometimes guilt is just the withdrawal symptom of breaking an old pattern. They trained you to feel cruel whenever you chose yourself. They trained you to believe love meant sacrifice without limits. But real love does not require you to disappear. Real family does not punish you for having a life. a marriage, a business, or a boundary. Sarah's bakery became more than a bakery after that. It became proof that she could build something without their approval. Proof that the hands they mocked were capable of creating a future they could not touch. Every cake that left her kitchen became a quiet declaration: I survived you. I outgrew you. I owe you nothing. Ryan never asked her to forgive them before she was ready. He never told her to be the bigger person just to make everyone else comfortable. He simply stood beside her, reminding her through steady action that love does not have to hurt. For the first time, Sarah learned what support felt like when it did not come with a bill attached. So no, this was not just a story about a ruined wedding invitation list. It was about a woman finally removing her name from a contract she never agreed to sign. The daughter who was treated like free labor became the woman who built a locked door, a legal record, a thriving business, and a life nobody could invade without consequences. And maybe that is the most powerful revenge of all. Not screaming, not begging, not proving yourself, just becoming so whole, so protected, and so at peace that the people who once controlled you can no longer even reach you. If this story hit close to home, ask yourself one question tonight. What part of your life are you still leaving unlocked for people who have already proven they cannot be trusted with access? Because the door does not close itself. At some point, you have to turn the key. Sarah did. And the moment she locked that door, she did not lose a family. She finally found herself. Have you ever had to enforce a massive boundary with a toxic person in your life? How did you handle the guilt? Drop your story in the comments below so we can learn from each other. And make sure to subscribe for more insights on protecting your peace and your assets. Remember, trust is earned, not owed.